I remember the exact second my life split into two versions of itself, one where I died and one where I survived. The wind was so loud it erased my scream before it ever existed. My body went weightless, spinning, falling, and the sky above me shrank faster than my thoughts could keep up. I saw his face at the open helicopter door, my husband's face, and in that instant, something inside me went cold and clear. This wasn't an accident. That moment didn't feel like chaos. It felt like truth. If you're still here, stay with me, because what happened next shouldn't be possible. And before I tell you how I survived, take 1 second to subscribe. Not because this is entertaining, but because this story almost never got told. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far this reaches, because what I'm about to share is a warning. Now let me take you back, not to the helicopter, but to the man I trusted long before the ground disappeared beneath me. When I met him, he was charming in a quiet way, not loud, not flashy, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, who remembered small details, who made you feel seen. He asked about my childhood, my fears, my dreams, and when he looked at me, it felt steady, safe. We moved fast, faster than I would have with anyone else, but nothing felt rushed. It felt certain. Friends said we were lucky. Strangers said we looked perfect together, and I believed it. I believed we were building something solid. The first cracks didn't come as arguments. They came as silences. He became distant in small ways, longer pauses before answering, late nights explained away with work, a phone that never left his side. When I asked questions, he smiled and told me I was imagining things, and I wanted to believe him. Love has a way of convincing you that doubt is betrayal. By the time I started feeling uneasy, my life was already deeply intertwined with his. Shared plans, shared finances, shared future. Walking away didn't feel like an option. It felt like destroying everything we'd built. So I stayed. And I ignored the feeling in my chest that whispered something wasn't right. The helicopter trip was his idea, a reset, he called it, a break from stress, a reminder of how far we'd come. He said it would be romantic, just the two of us above the city, watching the world shrink beneath us. I remember laughing as we boarded. I remember thinking maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I'd let fear talk too loudly. Maybe this was us finding our way back. The blades roared to life. The ground pulled away, and for a few minutes, everything felt calm, until it didn't. I don't remember a warning. I don't remember a sudden argument or raised voices. I remember turning toward him, just for a second, and seeing something on his face I'd never seen before. Not anger, not panic, enjoyment. His hand moved fast, not hesitating, not unsure. One push, one decision, and suddenly the world was nothing but air and noise, and the understanding that the person I trusted most had chosen a version of reality where I didn't exist. As I fell, time did something strange. It stretched. Every thought arrived fully formed. I thought about the life I almost had, the future I believed in, the man I married. And then I understood something even more terrifying than the fall itself. He expected this to be clean, final. I was supposed to disappear. But the story didn't end there. Because survival isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it happens quietly in a fraction of a second, when instinct takes over and the impossible becomes the only option left. And what happened after that fall is the reason you're hearing my voice right now. I'll tell you how I lived and what he did next when he realized I wasn't dead. I woke up to the sound of a monitor beeping steadily beside me. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. Everything felt distant, muted, like my body was underwater. Then the pain hit all at once, sharp, deep, unforgiving. My left arm was immobilized, my ribs burned every time I breathed, and my head felt like it had been split open and stitched back together. A nurse noticed my eyes open and hurried over. Her name tag read Marilyn. She had kind eyes, the kind that made you feel safe without trying. "Well," she said softly, "welcome back. You gave us quite a scare." I swallowed, my throat dry and raw. "What happened to me?" She glanced at the chart. "You were involved in a helicopter accident. You fell from a significant height. Honestly, it's a miracle you survived. The doctors say that tree saved your life." A miracle. That's what everyone would call it. "What about my husband?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay weak, confused. Marilyn smiled gently. "He's been here every day, barely leaves the hospital. He stepped out to get coffee, but I can call him if you want." My heart slammed against my ribs. "No," I said too quickly, then softened my tone. "Not yet. I'm still foggy." She nodded. "That's normal with a concussion. Take your time." After she left, I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. The fall, the push, his face, the way he didn't scream my name. Daniel had already told his version of the story. I could feel it. Later that evening, he walked into my room. He looked exactly like a grieving husband should. Red eyes, slumped shoulders, fear painted perfectly across his face. Anyone watching would have felt sorry for him. Anyone except me. "Bella," he whispered, rushing to my bedside and grabbing my unbroken hand. "Thank God you're alive." His touch made my skin crawl. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice shaking, "when I saw you fall." I studied him carefully. There it was, something behind his concern. Not relief, disappointment. "I don't remember much," I lied. "Just falling." "That's okay," he said quickly. "The doctor said your memory might be patchy. The pilot said there was turbulence. Something went wrong with the door." The pilot. My pulse quickened. "Is he okay?" He hesitated for half a second too long. "He survived. He's in critical condition, but stable." So there was a witness. But did he see anything? "I've already contacted the insurance company just to make sure your medical bills are covered." Of course he had. When he left, I finally let myself cry, not because I was heartbroken, but because I understood the danger I was in. If Daniel suspected I remembered the truth, he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to expose him. Not yet. First, I needed help. The next morning, I asked Marilyn for privacy and borrowed a phone. When I was alone, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Rachel Moore, my closest friend from nursing school. She answered on the second ring. "Bella? Oh my God, Daniel said you—" "I'm alive, but I shouldn't be, and I need you to listen very carefully." There was silence on the line. "I think my husband tried to kill me." Rachel didn't ask if I was sure. She just said, "I'm coming." Rachel arrived the next day, disguised as a visiting medical coordinator. She hugged me gently, careful of my injuries, and her jaw tightened as I told her everything. "I knew something was wrong with him," she said quietly. "I just didn't know it was this bad." She slid a folder beneath my blanket. "6 months ago," she said, "Daniel took out a $2 million life insurance policy on you. You're the insured. He's the sole beneficiary." I felt sick, but not surprised. "There's more," she added. "He's having an affair with his assistant, Lena Parker. It's been going on for almost a year." The photos told me everything I needed to know. My husband, another woman, our house. I closed my eyes. I need to disappear, I said. Rachel didn't hesitate. Then we make you disappear. Over the next 48 hours, we planned everything. A staged death, a closed casket, a clean exit. Rachel had connections from cases she'd worked, people who helped women vanish when the system failed them. The night before it happened, I lay in my hospital bed and said goodbye to the woman I used to be. Isabella Cruz was trusting, loyal, willing to sacrifice herself for love. That woman died the moment Daniel pushed me out of that helicopter. And the woman who survived, she was done being merciful. The official time of my death was 6:52 a.m. That's what the paperwork said anyway. According to the hospital records, Isabella Cruz died from internal bleeding caused by complications from the helicopter accident. The doctor who signed the certificate never looked at my face long enough to memorize it. He didn't need to. To him, I was just another tragic case. To Daniel, I was a paycheck. From a service hallway in the basement, I watched him arrive to identify my body. He wore black. His tie was crooked. His eyes were red, but not swollen the way grief usually makes them. When the nurse told him I was gone, he collapsed into a chair like a man whose soul had been ripped apart. If I didn't know him, I might have believed it. Rachel squeezed my hand as we watched through the small window. "You ready?" I nodded. I had never been more ready for anything in my life. 3 hours later, I was wheeled out of the hospital inside a laundry cart, sheets piled on top of me. The air smelled like detergent and metal. Every bump hurt, but I welcomed the pain. Pain meant I was alive. By the time the sun set, Isabella Cruz was legally dead. The funeral happened 3 days later. Closed casket. Daniel insisted on it. From a car across the street, I watched the service. Friends cried, coworkers whispered, my hospital supervisor held flowers. Daniel stood at the front, playing the role of the devastated widower perfectly. And standing a few rows back was Lena. She didn't cry. She watched Daniel the way a prizefighter watches a belt being handed over. After the service, I followed them. I watched Daniel return to the house we shared for 5 years. I watched him pour a drink. I watched him sit in silence for exactly 10 minutes. Then Lena arrived. He opened the door, smiling. They kissed. They laughed. "I can't believe it worked," she said, her voice carrying through the open window. "I was terrified something would go wrong." "It was perfect," Daniel replied. "No witnesses, no body. Insurance will take care of the rest." "How long until the money?" 30 days, maybe less. $2 million. That's what my life was worth to him. I didn't cry. I memorized every word. That night, Isabella Cruz stopped existing emotionally, not just legally. I couldn't be her anymore. She would never survive what was coming next. 2 weeks later, I became Maya Alvarez. New name, new documents, new face in the mirror. Rachel had thought of everything. Bank accounts, credit history, a backstory detailed enough to survive scrutiny. Maya was a widow whose husband had died years earlier, leaving her a modest fortune and a quiet hunger for opportunity. I moved into a modern apartment across town. Clean lines, no memories, no ghosts. While Daniel mourned publicly and celebrated privately, I studied. I learned everything about his company, Brightwell Mutual. Its finances, its weaknesses, its internal politics. I learned who talked too much, who drank too much, who hated Daniel quietly. I learned something else too. Daniel wasn't just greedy. He was sloppy. He'd been skimming money from claims for years, small amounts, often enough to add up. Lena helped him cover it. They weren't just killers. They were thieves. 6 weeks after my funeral, I walked into a downtown restaurant wearing heels Daniel had never seen on me and confidence he never let me have. He was there with a client. I dropped my purse near his chair. "Let me help you," he said automatically, crouching down. I looked into his eyes. Nothing. No recognition. "Thank you," I said warmly. "I'm Maya." "Daniel," he replied, smiling. "Nice to meet you." It was almost funny. From that moment on, I made myself unavoidable. A week later, I arranged a meeting with Brightwell Mutual as a potential investor. A quiet inquiry, enough to raise interest. When Daniel saw my name on the schedule, he looked curious. When he saw me in the boardroom, he looked unsettled. "He feels like we've met," he said. "People say that," I replied. Over the next month, I became a presence, friendly, observant, interested. I praised his work, asked questions, gained access. And while Daniel tried to impress me, I collected evidence. Files, numbers, emails. Meanwhile, Lena grew suspicious. Anonymous photos started appearing. Innocent lunches cropped to look intimate. Gifts sent to Daniel's office with no sender. Their trust cracked. I listened to them fight. I recorded everything. One afternoon, Lena screamed, "I helped you kill your wife for this?" That recording alone was worth more than any insurance payout. By the time Brightwell's internal audit began, Daniel was unraveling. His mistakes multiplied. His confidence vanished. His allies disappeared. And when the company finally confronted him, he admitted just enough to destroy himself. The insurance money never came. His accounts were frozen. Lena fled. Daniel lost everything. Only then did I visit him. I sat in his apartment. By the time Brightwell Mutual officially opened an internal investigation, Daniel was already falling apart. I could see it in the way his hand shook when he held his coffee, in the way his smile arrived half a second too late, in the way he kept checking his phone, waiting for messages from Lena that never came. She had stopped answering him. That alone terrified him more than the audit ever could. I stayed close, but never obvious. I became the calm presence he leaned on, the one person at the company who seemed to believe in him. I listened while he complained about stress, about pressure, about how everyone suddenly seemed to be watching him. "They're digging too deep," he told me one afternoon, pacing my office. "I've given this company everything." I nodded sympathetically. Investigations can feel personal, especially when someone has enemies. That word, enemies, made him stop. "You think someone's doing this to me?" I met his eyes. "I think people don't always realize who they hurt until it's too late." He laughed nervously and changed the subject, but the seed was planted. Behind the scenes, the audit team was uncovering exactly what I knew they would: altered claim amounts, missing documentation, payment trails that led nowhere except back to Daniel's department. The deeper they went, the uglier it became. What surprised even me was how quickly Daniel began to unravel once the pressure mounted. He made mistakes he never would have made before. He snapped at coworkers. He missed deadlines. Clients started complaining. His reputation, once polished and respected, began to crack. Lena didn't help. She showed up late, left early, avoided eye contact. Whispers followed her down the hall. One evening, long after most people had gone home, I heard raised voices echoing from Daniel's office. I slowed my steps and stood just outside the door. "You said this would be clean," Lena hissed. "You said no one would ever look this close." "I didn't expect an audit," Daniel shot back, "and I didn't expect you to start acting paranoid." "Paranoid?" She laughed sharply. "You're the one who killed your wife for money." The words hit me harder than I expected. Even though I knew the truth, hearing it spoken so casually, so cruelly, sent a cold wave through my chest. I turned on my recorder. "You don't say that out loud," Daniel whispered fiercely. "Are you insane? I gave up everything for you. My job, my reputation, my freedom. And now you're going to let me take the fall?" "No one's taking the fall. We just need to stay calm." "You pushed her," Lena snapped. "You loosened the harness. You planned it. Don't pretend this is somehow my fault." Silence followed. Then Daniel said something I would never forget. "If she had just stayed dead, None of this would be happening. I stepped away before they opened the door. That night, I sat in my apartment replaying the recording again and again, not because I needed the evidence, I already had enough to bury him, but because I needed to hear it until my hands stopped shaking. The next morning, Brightwell's executives called Daniel into a closed-door meeting. It lasted 2 hours. When he came out, he looked like a stranger. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused. Security followed him to his desk and stood silently while he packed his things into a cardboard box. No dramatic outburst, no shouting, just quiet humiliation. As he passed my office, he stopped. "They're saying I stole money," he said, his voice barely holding together. "They have proof." I tilted my head, concerned. "Did you?" He swallowed. "I was going to fix it." That was the closest thing to a confession he'd ever give. By the end of the day, Daniel Cruz no longer worked at Brightwell Mutual. His accounts were frozen, the insurance company halted the payout on my policy, citing ongoing investigation. Lena disappeared that same night. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Daniel tried calling her, texting her, showing up at her apartment. Neighbors said she had moved out days earlier. For the first time since the helicopter, he was truly alone. And that's when I decided it was time. I went to his apartment just after sunset, the same place where he had toasted my death. I let myself in and sat down, calm and patient, waiting in the chair by the window. When the door opened, he froze. "Hello, Daniel," I said softly. He stared at me like he was looking at a ghost. You look just like your wife?" I finished. His knees gave out. He collapsed onto the couch, shaking. "That's impossible. You're dead." I leaned forward. "No, I survived. And everything you've lost since then, that was me." He didn't scream. He didn't deny it. He just covered his face and cried. And for the first time since the fall, I felt something close to peace.
He cried for a long time. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying people expect when someone's world collapses. This was quieter, broken, like the sound had already left him and his body was just catching up. I didn't interrupt. I watched him the same way he once watched me fall. Detached, calculating, waiting for the moment it would be over. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "It just got out of control." I let the silence stretch. "You planned it," I said calmly. "You took out the policy. You loosened the harness. You pushed me. That didn't happen by accident." He looked up at me, eyes red and desperate. "Lena pushed me. She said we'd never be free unless I was dead," I finished for him. He nodded, sobbing again. "I loved you once." That almost made me laugh. "You loved the version of me that made your life easier, the one who worked extra shifts, the one who believed you, the one who trusted you with her back turned." I stood up and walked around the room slowly, taking it in. The empty bottles, the unpaid bills on the counter, the suit jacket thrown carelessly over a chair. This was the wreckage of the man who thought killing me would fix his life. "I want you to understand something," I said, stopping in front of him. "I didn't destroy you out of anger. I destroyed you because you were dangerous." He looked up, confused. "If I had confronted you in that hospital, you would have tried again. If I had gone to the police without proof, you would have talked your way out. Men like you always do." I pulled my phone from my pocket and placed it on the table. "There are recordings," I said. "Emails, financial records, confessions, everything." His breathing quickened. "You're going to turn me in?" "I could," I said honestly. He dropped to his knees. "Please, I'll disappear. I'll leave. I'll never come back. Just don't ruin me completely." I studied him for a long moment. The man who begged in front of me looked nothing like the man who smiled as he pushed me into open air. "I'm not here to save you. I'm here to finish this." I leaned closer. "You're going to leave this city tonight. You're going to take whatever cash you can carry and vanish. No calls, no messages, no reaching out to anyone from your old life." He nodded frantically. "Yes, yes, I'll do anything. And if I ever hear your name again," I added quietly, "every piece of evidence I have goes straight to the police. Attempted murder doesn't age well in court." He swallowed hard. "You'd let me go?" I shook my head. "No, I'm letting you live with it." I walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and Daniel," I said without turning around, "the insurance company already knows something was wrong. If they ever discover I'm alive, they'll want to know why I faked my death." He understood immediately. I left him there, shaking, alone, exactly the way he left me in the sky. The next morning, I submitted an anonymous report to the authorities, everything related to the embezzlement. Nothing about me. Nothing about the helicopter. By the time they came looking for him, Daniel Cruz was gone. Weeks passed. Then months. I bought a larger stake in Brightwell Mutual. When the founder decided to retire early, exhausted and embarrassed by the scandal, I acquired the rest of the company. I became its owner. No one questioned it. To them, I was just a sharp investor who saw an opportunity. The city looked different once you stop seeing it as a place to survive and start seeing it as something you own. Every morning I walked into Brightwell Mutual knowing the building answered to me now. The whispers had faded, the scandal had settled. Daniel Cruz was a name people spoke in the past tense, usually followed by a quiet shake of the head, a cautionary tale. And me? I was the woman who cleaned up the mess. What no one knew was that I hadn't just taken over a company, I had taken back my life. But peace has a way of attracting attention. 3 months after Daniel disappeared, Detective Sarah Lynn returned. This time, she didn't announce herself. She simply appeared in my office doorway while my assistant was at lunch, her presence calm but heavy. "They found him," she said. My hand paused over a stack of contracts. "Daniel?" She nodded. "Oregon, small town, different name, working nights at a gas station." I leaned back slowly. "So he didn't disappear after all." "He didn't stay clean either," she added. "Forgery, small fraud. He can't help himself. Some habits are stronger than fear." "They're bringing him back," she continued. "Embezzlement, insurance fraud, and now, attempted murder." I met her eyes. "Attempted?" She watched me carefully. "Because there's still no body." I didn't respond. After a moment, she sighed. "He's been telling anyone who will listen that his wife is alive, that she faked her death and ruined him." I almost smiled. "And?" I asked. "No one believes him," she said. "Desperate men say desperate things." "Good." She stood to leave, then paused. "You know, if Isabella Cruz were alive, she'd be one of the most dangerous women I've ever investigated." I held her gaze. Survival does that to people. When she left, I sat there for a long time. I didn't feel relief. I felt closure approaching. Daniel went to trial quietly. There were no cameras, no headlines, just paperwork, testimonies, and evidence stacked higher than his excuses. He was sentenced to life. Lena Parker was found 6 months later in another state. She took a plea deal, 15 years. Justice didn't roar, it whispered. By the time it was over, I had already moved on. I expanded Brightwell, acquired smaller firms, invested in healthcare facilities. I hired women who had been overlooked, promoted people who worked without recognition. Power, I learned, isn't about control, it's about choice. One evening, 5 years after the helicopter, I stood in a cemetery just outside the city. A simple headstone marked a name that no longer belonged to me. Isabella Cruz. Fresh flowers rested at its base. Someone remembered her. I placed my own flowers down gently. She had been kind, loyal, good. She had also been unprepared for the kind of evil that smiles at you from across the dinner table. "I'm safe now," I whispered. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." As I walked away, I didn't look back, because that part of my life was finished. Today, people know me as Maya Alvarez, investor, executive, philanthropist. They invite me to panels, quote me in articles, ask how I built everything so fast. I always give the same answer. I stopped waiting for permission. They never ask what it cost. Time didn't heal everything. It just made the sharp edges easier to live with. After Daniel was sentenced, I thought the story was finished. The villain was gone. Justice, however quiet, had been served. I believed life would finally slow down and let me breathe. I was wrong. Power changes how people look at you. They stop seeing who you were and start seeing what they can get. Every meeting, every handshake, every smile came with calculations hidden behind it. I learned quickly that strength attracts both respect and threat. One morning, an envelope appeared on my desk with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Me. Not Maya Alvarez, the executive, but me leaving the cemetery where Isabella Cruz was buried. My pulse didn't spike, it went cold. Someone else knew. I didn't call the police. I didn't panic. I did what survival had taught me to do. I observed. I waited. 2 days later, I got the email. "I know who you are, and I know what you did. We should talk." No demand, no threat. That was worse. I traced the sender through layers of proxies until I hit a dead end. Whoever this was, they were careful, professional, not a journalist, not law enforcement. Someone patient. I agreed to meet, public place, crowded, cameras everywhere. The cafe was busy when I arrived. I ordered coffee and sat near the window, my reflection staring back at me like a stranger. Then a woman sat across from me. Late 30s, calm posture, sharp eyes. She smiled like someone who already knew the ending. "My name is Elena Brooks," she said. "I used to work in insurance fraud investigation." I said nothing. I reviewed Daniel Cruz's case after his arrest. Something didn't add up. A dead woman with no body, a husband too confident, a company that collapsed just in time for a new investor to rise. I took a slow sip of coffee. "That's an interesting theory." She smiled wider. "You survived an attempted murder. You outplayed everyone involved, and you built a life so strong the truth can't touch it." Finally, I spoke. "Why are you here?" "Because I don't want to expose you," she said. "I want to work with you." I studied her face. No greed, no fear. Purpose. There are other men like Daniel, smarter ones, richer ones, and women who don't survive them. The cafe noise faded into the background. She continued. "I run a private network, off the books. We help people disappear, rebuild, or fight back when the system fails them." I almost laughed. "You're recruiting me." "I'm offering you something meaningful," she replied. "A chance to turn what happened to you into something that saves others." For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar stir in my chest. Not anger, not fear, direction. "I don't need money," she added. "I need someone who understands how power really works." I looked out the window at the city, my city now. "I don't destroy people anymore," I said slowly. Elena nodded. "Neither do we. We protect." I thought of the woman I had been, the woman who trusted too easily, the woman who almost died because the world wasn't built to protect her. "I'll listen," I said. That night, standing on my balcony, I realized something important. Surviving wasn't the end of my story. It was the qualification. I didn't say yes right away. People assume that when you survive something impossible, you become fearless. That's not true. You become careful. You learn that every choice has weight, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. For 2 weeks after meeting Elena, I went back to my normal routine: board meetings, contracts, charity events. I let life look ordinary while my mind stayed alert, listening for patterns, watching for shadows. Elena didn't push. That alone told me she was different. When she finally reached out again, it wasn't with pressure, it was with information. A woman named Claire Donovan, 32 years old, married to a tech entrepreneur, no criminal record, no history of instability, recently reported missing. The official story said she left voluntarily. The unofficial details told something darker. Her husband had quietly moved money offshore, changed security firms, deleted internal camera footage from their home. Police had stalled. Lawyers were circling. I read the file in silence. "This isn't about revenge," Elena said when we met again. "This is about timing. If Claire is still alive, there's a window, and you understand windows better than anyone." She wasn't wrong. I thought about the tree that broke my fall, about the minutes between impact and rescue, about how close I had come to becoming a file someone skimmed and forgot. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Resources, strategy, and your judgment," she said. "You know how men like this think." I agreed to consult. That's what I told myself at first. Just advice, just oversight. But the moment I stepped into the safe apartment where Elena's team worked, I felt it. That same focus I'd had while dismantling Daniel's life. Calm, clear, unshakable. We found Elena alive 3 days later. Barely. She was being kept in a remote property under the excuse of mental health care, drugged, isolated, gaslit into believing no one was looking for her. When she saw us, she didn't cry. She stared at me and whispered, "He said I was crazy." I took her hand. "You're not." We didn't expose her husband publicly. Not yet. We moved Claire first. New identity, medical help, evidence secured quietly. The kind of evidence that doesn't disappear when money gets involved. Watching her leave the country safely, I felt something settle inside me. This wasn't obsession, it was alignment. Over the next year, I became more involved, still invisible, still careful. I never pulled strings directly. I designed systems, created pathways, made sure the right doors opened at the right time. We helped whistleblowers, abuse survivors, people trapped in legal gray zones where truth existed but protection didn't. And every time I saw the same pattern. Powerful people don't expect resistance. They expect silence. One night, Elena asked me something I hadn't prepared for. "What happens if someone recognizes you, really recognizes you?" I didn't answer immediately. "I've thought about that," I said finally. "If the truth comes out, it comes out. I didn't commit the crime. I survived it." "And if they try to make you the villain?" she pressed. I smiled slightly. "Then they'll underestimate me, just like he did." Still, I knew the risk was real. Fame, even quiet influence, attracts scrutiny, and secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait. The call came sooner than I expected. An unfamiliar number, a calm male voice. "Miss Alvarez," he said, "this is Thomas Reed, federal prosecutor. I believe you and I should have a conversation." My grip tightened on the phone. "What about?" I asked. "A woman named Isabella Cruz." There it was. He didn't accuse, he didn't threaten. He invited. I agreed to meet him, because running had never saved me. Preparation had. As I hung up, I looked out over the city lights again. The same view, a different meaning. Once I survived by disappearing. Now I was about to find out what it meant to stand still. I didn't sleep the night before meeting Thomas Reed. Not because I was afraid of prison or exposure, but because I was tired of running through every possible ending in my head. I had survived by calculating outcomes for years. This time, I wanted the truth to breathe. The federal building was colder than I expected. Everything echoed. Footsteps, voices, the past. Thomas Reed wasn't what I imagined. No sharp smile, no aggressive posture. Just a man in his 40s with tired eyes and a legal pad that looked overused. "Thank you for coming, Miss Alvarez," he said. I sat across from him, calm, steady. "You asked about Isabella Cruz," I said, "so let's not pretend this is small talk." He nodded. "Fair." He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were copies of documents I already knew existed: insurance filings, hospital inconsistencies, the empty grave report. "We know she survived," he said. "We know her husband tried to kill her, and we know he's now serving life." I didn't speak. "What we don't know," he continued, "is whether Isabella Cruz committed a crime by faking her death." I finally looked up. "Did she profit from it?" "No." "Did she harm anyone innocent?" "No." "Then what exactly are you asking me?" He leaned back slightly. "I'm asking whether the woman sitting in front of me is Isabella Cruz." The room went quiet. I could lie, I could deny, I could keep the mask on forever, but something in me was done hiding. "Yes," I said, "I am." He didn't react the way I expected. No handcuffs, no raised voice, just a slow exhale. "She disappeared to survive," he said softly, "not to escape justice." "That's correct." He closed the folder. "Off the record, I think the law failed you first." I felt something loosen in my chest. "Officially," he added, "this case is closed. There's no appetite to prosecute a woman who outsmarted her attempted murderer and built a life that now employs hundreds of people." I held his gaze. "So that's it?" He stood. "That's it." As I left the building, the air felt different, lighter. Not because I was free, I'd been free for a long time, but because the last shadow had finally stepped aside. Weeks later, I stood on that same balcony overlooking the city, but this time I wasn't looking back. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who believed love was protection, the one who thought loyalty was enough. She didn't know how dangerous silence could be. I also thought about the women we helped through Elena's network, the ones who survived, the ones who didn't, the ones still waiting for someone to believe them. I understood something clearly then. My story was never just about revenge. It was about authorship. I took my life back by writing it myself, line by line, choice by choice, until the past no longer owned the ending. People still ask how I became powerful so fast. I never correct them. Power didn't come quickly. It came the moment I refused to disappear quietly. Somewhere out there, Daniel Cruz wakes up every day knowing the woman he tried to erase became everything he could never control. And that's enough. Before I go, if this story held you, if it made you feel something real, don't let it end here. Subscribe, because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're warnings, mirrors, and sometimes permission to survive louder. And if you've ever felt underestimated, unheard, or pushed to the edge, tell me in the comments, not your name, just your truth. Because survival is powerful, but being seen, that's unstoppable.